Okay, so I just talked about the Angels. Now it's time to talk about the Rockies because their season's done. I mean, are they going to make the playoffs? No, they won't. They're 22-27. They're fourth in the NL West. They're literally like the Angels, except they have worse relieving, better starting pitching, and a little. I mean, they got Ariano, so I mean, they're kind of like a mirror image of the Angels, to be honest with you. So let's talk about them. So there have been some games this year where it's just like, how did you give up 20 runs against the Giants? You know, those sort of games. Or how did you get crushed by a team like the Padres that badly? And the Padres are really good. And they just given up some really bad games. They had a strong start in the season, very strong start to be fact. And you know, after the first couple of weeks, you know, me included, everyone was like, hey, maybe the Rockies finally figured it out. Maybe they can finally make that strong playoff push. But then they have done what they've been doing for the last year or two and just lose games that they shouldn't. You know, they have a tough schedule. You know, they're facing the Dodgers. The Padres kind of came out of nowhere. But, you know, I mean, just come on, man. The Giants, you give up 20 runs against the Giants. Now that's a problem. And speaking of runs, I think the first thing to point out is the relieving. I mean, who are your two best guys? Daniel Bard and Yency Almonte. I mean, they're good. You know, they'll definitely be good enough to be your relievers for your future. You know, Bard's 35, so is he a free agent this year? I don't know. Probably. He's 35. Almonte, he's 26, so he's might go up for his development. Besides that, who else do you have? Estevez, Kinley, Diaz. Those guys are, their ERAs are at a 7, which is, you know, bad. They are bad nonetheless. They cannot, I mean, they can strike out guys, but they are not really good when it comes to, you know, how can I say this? They're not good when it comes to not giving up walks, and all that. They give up some pretty bad walks, nonetheless. I mean, if your whip is at a 2.2, that's like straight up, you're gonna get cut. I mean, you're not even gonna go to AAA or AA. You're just gonna be like, nah, you're definitely not gonna stay here in the team mode, you know. And that's just their main problem is they're leaving. You know, that game against the Giants. Who started that game? Who started in that game? Was it Castellini? I think it was Ryan Castellini. I want to say. Or no, was it John Gray? I think it was John Gray. But whoever it is, they had a pretty bad outing, and their relievers did not help by any means necessary. And that's just been the kind of the year for them. You know, they had a really strong start, and they just fell apart very quickly. I mean, they collapsed. They collapsed faster than the Roman Empire did, and that says a lot. And, you know, your goal for the future, if you want Ariano to be happy, is just improve this pitching by any means necessary. Because next year might be his last year as a Rocky. Because if you don't know, yes, he did sign a long-term deal, but he has the option in 2021 where if he doesn't like how the team is performing, he could say, like, adios, and just become a free agent. So, yes, he did sign a long-term deal, but he managed to get an option where in 2021 he can become a free agent. So, let's see here. We could talk about the hitting. I think Story, Dahl, well, actually, no, not Dahl, Blackman. So those are probably your four main guys. You know, Story, Ariano, Dahl, and Blackman. That's a really good pairing. You know, I like Tony Walters. He's all right, but he's not a great hitter. He's definitely not a good hitter, but he's decent. They could find themselves another catcher. And would it be crazy enough to say that they could get like someone like Buster Posey? I know he's not the same, but it's worth mentioning. I mean, he's better than Walters in my opinion. Walters can probably be their backup catcher and be like, hey, we found someone better than you, so suck it up, man. What else is there to talk about? I mean, I really like Story. Everybody likes Story. Everybody likes Oriano. Everybody likes Blackman. They're legit. They're great hitters. They're great, all-around hitters, I would say. Guys who can draw a lot of walks, who can draw a lot of hits, who can produce a lot of runs if they're all in the game together. If the base runners are like, Story's at second, Oriano's at third, and then Blackman's like, I'm going to crank this out of the ballpark. That's sort of 2, 3, 4 they have, which is awesome. You need that. David Dahl has been really disappointing this year. I mean, he went from, 310 to 176 batting average. I mean, you don't even have to look into that and say to yourself, wow, he's slumping. Like, really bad, And I think David Dahl is for real. I think, Dahl is the type of guy that he's more about getting on base than to get the home run. So that way they can get the extra ribby. So I just think the hitting's definitely there. I think they're a couple more pieces away from being really good. I think they really, what they really need is that leadoff man. Someone like a Victor Robles, a Trey Turner sort of guy, maybe even a Brian Anderson. Just someone that can add some speed. Gets on base, plays really good defense as well. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I think getting someone like a Brian Anderson would help. I know he's not a free agent this year, but still, someone equivalent to that. What is there to say other than the hitting has been expected, to say the least. I mean, what you're getting out of those guys. Dahl is having a bad year, but next year will be a new year. We won't be experiencing this whole pandemic that's happening. So there you go. Matt Kemp is their DH. I mean, he's 35. I mean, he's a good enough I guess he's a good DH for them. 6 homers. I mean, if he's like 4th or 5th in your team in home runs, that's pretty something to say. That's something to be said right there. And on top of him being in the discussion of top 3, top 4 in ribbies, that's pretty good. They have a pretty decent DH. I've always liked Matt Kemp. It's just their pitching. Now, what do they need? Well, for one, relieving. That's definitely the thing that they really need, because in the deadline, they acquired Michael Gibbons, which is a good acquirement in my eyes. I know that he hasn't been that good this year, but I think he was worth the trade. I don't remember what they give up for him, but just the fact that they got a better reliever, just someone that can get better than a 4 ERA is good enough for this team alone. They definitely need just Bard is 35, but you're going to have to find his replacement at some point, right? I mean, he's 35. I mean, he's your closer, but he's definitely not your long-term closer. I mean, he's definitely a guy that you could say, hey, he's going to be our 8th inning guy once we find our legit closer. Who's going to be our legit closer? I don't know. Is Trevor May a free agent this year? I think he is. I don't really remember the free agent class, but if you get something like a Trevor May, that would be pretty huge. like I said, they're gonna have to make some more trades to get some better relievers. The question is, who are they going to be their relievers for the long term? I don't know. It's really hard to say. I can see I can see one guy, and that's Amante. He's been really good for them. Besides that, who else? You know what would also help is getting that ace. I think I might have touched this, maybe not. But it's a good thing to bring up, nonetheless. But if you get someone like I don't know, who's free agency right now? I mean, Trevor Bauer. I mean, is he gonna go to the Colorado Rockies? Maybe not. But they are like that, like their rotation's that good enough where if they just get a ace, then they can go, hey, we have a pretty good rotation. But their priority is definitely the relievers, man. But now let's talk about Ariano. If you're Ariano right now, what is your expectations? My expectation for Ariano, if I'm Ariano, I'm like, okay, next year's the year where I could potentially become a free agent. Where do I stand now? And it entirely depends on what this front office does for this team next year, because this is a huge year for the Rockies next year. Because, they had a guy like LeMahieu, didn't really pan out. And let's be honest here, when they let go LeMahieu, he wasn't supposed to be like he is in New York. I'll give him slack on that. Nobody expected that whatsoever. Ottavino, they let him go in free agency, and he ended up in the Yankees for 3 years, $30 million. So a little bit too much bread for a single reliever. So very understandable there. But besides that, they're gonna have to trade for some guys in the offseason, and if they can, then kudos to them. Because that shows commitment to winning and keeping Ariano happy. Because 2021 is really the deciding year of what this Rockies team is going to look like for the future. I mean, I like the Rockies, man. I think, outside of, the Yankees, the Rockies are my second personal favorite team. Not just because, we got some pieces from them, but because they're actually very fun to watch in Coors Field. So, that's it.